This is Corinne.
And this is Ayani.
And welcome to another La Petite SLL, a sex, love, literature minisode.
This episode, we continue our reflection on the first year of SLL and ask the question, why love?
We talk about the entanglement between sex and romance, our favorite and least favorite romance tropes. Spoiler, Ayani really likes There Was Only One Bed.
I
do! And other kinds of love that matter to us in the stories we read, watch, and share.
If you like what you hear and are also a fan of the There Is Only One Bed trope, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at SexLoveLit.
Our DMs are open.
And now on with the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another La Petite SLL. We are, as always, very excited to have you here for yet another episode of ours. So, as we said with our last La Petite, we're coming up on a year of having recorded our podcast.
And what is time?
What is time? I don't know. Once the pandemic hit, I lost all traces of time. I don't really know what time is. What is a year?
Somehow it is a hurricane season again. Sorry, I'm getting off track.
No, that's fine. Yeah, we are recording this literally as Hurricane Elsa is making its way up the coast of Florida. Gainesland. Wow. Gainesville is inland, which is what I was trying to say. So we should be okay. But yeah, so it's hurricane season. I got to move my trash cans somewhere safe so they don't get blown away. So what this means is we started thinking about our podcast last year during hurricane season.
That's true.
Yeah, which is wild to think about.
I don't remember which episode it was, but I complained very loudly about a hurricane happening in November. I think it was Ada, and I think it followed like a similar track to what Elsa is doing right now.
Oh, interesting. I don't remember. I'll have to go back and listen. I know we complained about thunderstorms frequently, and it is raining right now. So if you guys hear anything weird, it might be this thunderstorm that's not a hurricane, but just a Florida thunderstorm. I
was looking at the radar. This is very boring for people not in Florida, but I was looking at the radar, and this might be one of the bands, like the outer bands from Elsa.
Oh, the wings? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this might be hurricane. It's not going to last that long, though. But anyhow, for people who are not... So, as I was saying, we're coming up on a year. We started plotting this last hurricane season. We are often besieged by rain over the course of our podcast. But to celebrate the fact that we've been recording a year and to kind of do some thinking about why it is that we're doing this, we are doing a series of 3 La Petite episodes that are each focused on one of our, let's say, title keywords, right? So this episode that you're listening to is Why Love, being the second word in our 3-word title.
Also the funniest to like just have as a question, like
why love?
Why do that? I don't know.
We are not going to answer that question. That's like a little too big for us, I think. But you can go listen to our commentary on why sex, which we had a lot to say about. In that one, we talked a lot about our research, since we both kind of talk about sex in different ways outside of the podcast. I think it was a really good one. I enjoyed it. So, I mean, of course I enjoyed it. I recorded it. You recorded it. But like, I think it was a good one. So if you're curious about why sex and haven't listened to that yet, I think it gives a lot of context to the podcast. And you can find that in all of our feeds, wherever you listen to SLL. I think we're a little extra chaotic today.
I don't know. Something about that hurricane energy.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know. It's just like in the air.
But the hurricane is in the air.
That's not funny.
It's not funny, but we're both laughing. So here we are. So on that note, why don't we talk about what's sparking joy? Because this is sure to be full of chaos. Corinne, and for some context, what sparking joy is when we talk about a piece of media, whatever kind of media, that is bringing us some joy in our lives at this moment, especially since we're not really talking about a piece of media this episode. We're not doing a deep dive like we normally do. So Corinne, what is sparking joy for you?
So I'm back on my bullshit. So I'm going to tell you about a K-drama. I recently finished a K-drama that recently wrapped up called Doom at Your Service, or I think the literal translation is Doom Came In Through My Front Door. It is a fantasy K-drama in which the main female lead has terminal brain cancer, and also everything else is going badly in her life. And she makes a wish for doom upon the world, and because of fantasy plot reasons, Doom is an attractive man who comes to grant her wish. Anyway, it's actually a lot like lighter and funnier than that premise sounds.
I was gonna say, at first I was like, is this a horror rom-com? But
I do also love those, but
yes.
I mean, no, it is not that. It is like, it has the supernatural thing going on with literal doom, but no, the cast is really, really excellent. It's playing with some of the fantasy romance tropes, I think, in an interesting way, because a lot of the times they can be very, very over the top. And there's this very interesting contrast between the like absurd stakes of the romance between Doom and the female lead and this like utterly mundane love triangle happening with the second female lead between like with her and then like her editor, because she's a romance web novelist and a cafe owner, and
living the dream.
She's delightful. It's all delightful. Some people I think were annoyed with the second female lead's love triangle, but it was a weird sort of back and forth between like the stakes, but I think it was doing that intentionally in a kind of smart way. Anyway, I really liked it. I didn't think I would like it, but I liked it a lot. And the longer I sit with it, the more sort of content I am with how it wrapped up.
Oh, well, that's like a ringing endorsement from you. So kind of similar to you, but in a different direction, I watched Fruits Basket, which is an anime that I read the manga when I was in high school, and they just wrapped up the second anime adaptation of that story. The first one was only one season, and they didn't go through the whole story, and it was a long time ago, and I remember liking it but not liking it. But this adaptation, oh my god, it was so good. So it was 3 seasons. I didn't realize that the last season had aired, so I powered through it over the course of, I don't know, it was probably less than a week. I have to go back to see when I tweeted about it, but it's done. I finished it and I cried the entire way through. So this is one of those like cathartic sadness moments. But what's really interesting for me about Fruits Basket is every time I go through the story again, it reminds me how much I love the story, which sometimes I think I forget. But also because I'm taking it in at different places in my life, how I react to the characters is different. So in the story, the main female character, Toru, is set up in kind of like a quote unquote love triangle situation with a boy named Kyo and a boy named Yuki, which it resolves itself. I'm not going to like go through the whole storyline, but it very much is set up like for the audience. Okay, who are you backing? Are you backing Kyo or are you backing Yuki? Which one is more of your type? Because they're very, very different kinds of boys. And I was always like a Kyo kind of girl. He's redheaded and fiery and he's angry and he turns into a cat. So of course, like,
yeah, you were a lost cause from the beginning.
Yeah, I was a lost cause. But
from the moment they said cat.
Yeah, I was like, oh, he's a cat. But now, as an adult, I just want to like hug him and be like, it's okay, you sweet summer child. It'll be all right. Like, I don't know if I ever told you this story, but I was rereading the manga, I want to say, in my late 20s. And I was just thinking about, because a lot of the adults in that show or in that story aren't good for shit. Like, they're terrible people. And now that I'm an adult, I'm like, wow, y'all were real fucked up to children. And there was no reason for you to be so fucked up to kids. So there was the last time I reread the manga, I was in the shower. I was like, well, what if Kyo was my son? Like, what would I do differently? And I went through this whole scenario. And when I got out the shower, I was weeping. And Andrew was like,
girl,
what is wrong with you? And I just went, I would love our cat's son. We would love our cat's son. And he was like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Oh, girl. So I think you have some deep-seated issues going on there.
I might. But when I watched it this time, even kind of like further removed from that reread, I was like, there was something that was happening and Kyo was psyching himself up for something. And I just like said, it came over me, like the auntie energy came over me. And I was like, you just gotta do it, baby. You just gotta do it. So like, it's very interesting watching how I evolve along with kind of how the story might sit differently with me. Like there are things now in Fruits Basket that I'm like, I don't like the way that relationship just exists. Because I'm 34 and a high school student dating a 20-something-year-old man makes me deeply uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you.
You know, so, but yeah, so Fruits Basket was bringing me both cathartic sadness, but also making me think about the fact that I am now like an auntie and this is something that I have to deal with in life. Though I will say, it makes a lot of sense for this episode that the things that are sparking joy for us right now are both love stories.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're both kind of resonating with the love that is happening in these narratives. So, love. Why love?
What? Tell me, in the words of Tina Turner, what has love got to do with it?
So now that you know that we are ancient, I mean, I guess most people know Tina Turner, though, right? That shouldn't be a really, like...
that was a before my time reference, but, like, my parents had it on kind of thing.
Yeah, it's playing in my head right now. But, yeah, love. Why love? What's love got to do with it? Why are we talking about love? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just thinking the ways... So, the first reason that we talk about love on our podcast is because, as you may have noticed in our Why Sex episode, our research more has to do with sex, but a sort of side effect of that is love is tangled up in how we think about sex. Whether you love someone or you don't when you sleep with them, that is an important question.
Yeah.
And part of the backstory. But also I think something that's interesting is when we think about particularly romantic love when sex isn't involved. So like I saw a Tumblr post about Doom at Your Service that was like, they didn't even fuck. They didn't have a fade to black or nothing. Don't waste your time. So, anyway.
Well, then.
Anyway, so thinking about the expectations of romantic love and the ways those are tangled up with sex, I think is and the way we consume it in pop culture and our expectations of fulfilling love stories, I think is an interesting question and just sort of something that general audiences bring to romantic texts.
No, I think that's excellent. And I mean, to think about Fruits Basket for a second, something that I picked up on a lot was how much sex was behind closed doors in the story that I don't think I was really paying attention to previously. Or maybe that they were playing up in this adaptation. I don't know. But there were quite a few scenes where I was like, oh, y'all are naked in bed together. I don't remember this.
And they're in high school?
No. These are adults.
Okay, I was like, excuse me.
Adults. Though, like, high schoolers are having sex.
I mean, high schoolers can do what they want to do, but they don't show that in TV shows.
Yeah, no. These were
in the same voyeuristic kind of way, at least.
Yeah. No.
I
don't know. I mean, Euphoria is a thing. I haven't watched that yet, but you know. But no, these were adults. But I was like, oh, I don't remember it being so explicit that these two characters were sleeping together. But now that I'm seeing it, how did I miss this? How did I not know that this was a thing? So now I have to go back and see if it was just me not paying attention and not being like, this isn't about my cat, baby. I don't care. Or like, if this was something that was played up for this particular adaptation. So I think that's a really great question of like, what do we expect when it comes to romance and how, I guess, love and sex are kind of commingled and kind of go hand to hand in discourse. It also makes me think of when we were talking about sex in our last La Petite, how when we were thinking about maybe doing the Brandy Cinderella, how someone commented, but there's no sex in that. So it's kind of like, I don't want to rehash the conversation that we had in a previous episode, but thinking about kind of, as you were saying, expectations of romance. Okay, so let me make this a little personal. Do you feel like in your romance stories, and I know we're not talking about sex, but in your romance stories, do you have an expectation of that kind of like consummation of the relationship?
So I don't know that I do. And I think part of that is because so much of what I consume is YA. And there can, of course, be explicit sex in YA, and that is something that is like developing over time and is a thing that exists. But just as often, it is also okay for like teenagers to not have sex. That is an option. And also for that sex to happen off screen or be implied. I am a big fan of headcanoning that kind of thing. So like for like going way back to like our Crash Landing on You episode, like that one wasn't one with like a lot of sort of explicit physical contact between the male lead and the female lead.
But very pointed physical contact. Like when they did touch each other, it was very important. But I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, and like they had a lot of chemistry, but like they never explicitly implied that they had, or explicitly implied, but they didn't do any of the like clearly off screen, they're having sex now. They didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
But there was still enough space in the narrative for me to have that be my headcanon, and it remains my headcanon, and no one can take that away from me. But I'm okay with not seeing that.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I do think there's something to be said for kind of leaving things to the imagination sometimes. Like, I'm perfectly fine with a romance story that doesn't have sex in it. That's okay, because not every relationship needs to be a sexual relationship. I just feel like, don't tease me. If you're going to put sex in it, put the sex in it. Or at least fade to black.
No, yeah, and thinking about it, because there's another, not to put everything in terms of K-dramas, but like there is this like expectation of like a certain kind of, I don't know, fulfillment of like a romance story where like they at least like kiss or something. And there's a K-drama airing right now. It might have just finished that I haven't watched, but it's a historical called like, I don't know, Boston Steal the Fate maybe. But like people have been getting real thirsty for those two to like at least kiss or do something. And it's a 20 episode K-drama, and I don't know that they ever even kissed.
Oh, that's interesting.
There was just a lot of like longing glances.
Ooh, oh my. Well, I think I have another question here about, and I think we're leaning a little bit more into romance right now, but I think we're going to broaden out the
thinking about like starting at least from a place of romantic love, I guess.
Yeah. I do think perhaps when you're, at least for me, when I'm watching a romance, there are some things that I look for and hope for, even if it's not something that I like needs to happen or expect to happen. Because I will say, if I was watching something and it was a romance, and it was explicitly a romance, not like these two have a loving relationship, but it's like a romance and there's no kiss at all, I might be a little like, damn, because I think there's a sense of maybe not escapism in romance, but there is that kind of like wanting of some kind of physical affection.
Yeah, it's like a kind of satisfaction, like a period at the end of the sentence. And like it's the kind of thing where like, so like, again, going back to another K-drama, but like we watched Sell Your Haunted House or Daebak Realty,
right?
And it was a really, really excellent K-drama. I really liked it a lot, but it was tagged as a romance, and that did not happen.
Yeah, it wasn't really a romance, and that's, I guess for me that's okay, because I do think there were interesting conversations about other kind of love, but I think if I'm looking for a romance, then I expect some feedback, or not feedback, but there are expectations of what that romance is going to be in some way, shape, or form. Would this be a good lead-in to thinking about affect theory? You kind of had a note here about that. I didn't know if you wanted to.
Yeah, I think I'm not really sure exactly what I meant there. I think this is maybe the most academic we may get on this episode. Yeah. But there is a thing in literary studies right now called affect theory. So affect with an A, not affect with an E, which is sort of like how a text like emotionally affects you, and thinking about that sort of how that emotional impact and taking that into account when we're doing like a kind of analysis of a text. And I think it's impossible to think about the way that love of all kinds works within these kinds of stories without taking into account affect theory, because and I do think that sometimes discussions about I'm not an expert here, but discussions about affect theory and about love can tend to be like a little bit hand wavy because it's not something you can measure. It's something that you feel, but also that's like what it makes us invested in and care about what is happening in these shows is like how much these characters love each other, how much we love them, how much we care about what happens to them. So I don't know. What do you think?
No, I think that makes perfect sense. I mean, I'm not an expert on affect theory either, but kind of related, one of the things that often tickles me is, at least in our corner of the humanities, there's often this desire to remove yourself from the thing that you are talking about. And I know for me, a lot of times that is kind of impossible. It's not that I can't look at something objectively, but like usually when I'm talking about something, it's because I like it and because I care about it.
Well, and there's this sort of pretense of objectivity, which to some degree is achievable, but to other degrees isn't, because you're always looking at it you're always inevitably looking at it from your perspective.
Right. But I think that's something that I like about doing the podcast is that we can just kind of feel these feelings. We can really lean into our emotive reactions to things in a way that's not always necessarily encouraged in our academic work. So like, it's okay that we really fangirl over something. Like we talked about, it's okay to not be okay. And while I think we did have some critiques of that particular K-drama, since we're on a K-drama kick right now, I think the fact that we both had really enjoyed the show, thought it was doing interesting things, and cared about the characters after the fact, like we still talk about that show sometimes. So being able to kind of lean into that emotive impact and really lean into the kind of love stories that we love is, I don't know, I think it's one of the great things about having this podcast and being able to do it and being able to have these conversations. There's not that same strict thought process of objectivity. We're not going to be objective. If we talk about something we don't like, you're going to know we don't like it. And if we talk about something we do like, you're going to know we like it. So yeah.
That being said, though, I do also want to say that and we talked about this a little bit in our Bridgerton episode, but like I have a tendency to be skeptical of love being the answer to problems because that is, again, very hand wavy and often overlooks concrete realities and inequalities and obstacles. And we're like, oh, we shall overcome it with our love. Like, oh, will we? Okay.
Is that how that works? Yeah, I think we touched on that in Bridgerton. I think we brought that up a little bit in our Happiest Season, episode 2.
Yeah.
Are the idea that love just fixes everything. And it's not that love can't be a powerful force, but I think especially in Bridgerton, it was because like love conquered racism. It's like, oh no, there is very much still racism. Like,
well, it kind of reminds me back in 2017 when there was a lot of protests happening. There was a lot of like love is love happening on signs, but like the follow-up that I liked is like, oh, I can't remember what the first line is, but like love is something or other, but also love requires action. And it does, like, just loving someone and saying that and even maybe genuinely feeling it isn't enough. It also requires some sort of follow-up. It has to be consistently shown in how you act as well.
No, I think that's a great point. So yeah, I think we're both skeptical of quote unquote love is the answer, love fixes all the problems. However, I think we both are also very into love stories.
Oh, like, yeah.
I totally love stories about people being happy and falling in love. And like, there are things about it that'll stress me out, right? Like I hate I've only overheard half of this sentence and thus I think that means that you hate me and I'm running away crying. Like there are things about it that are stressful that I don't like and that feel kind of outside the realm of like life. But I think we both really do enjoy a good love story. We keep coming back to them. I think if you go through a lot of the What's Sparking Joy for us, I think at least one of us talks about a love story each time. Maybe not.
Except maybe the episode where you made us do songs.
I thought that was interesting.
It was very interesting, but they were not love stories.
I think mine was a love song, but that's fine.
Mine may have also been a love song from a K-drama.
So there. But yeah, I mean, not to say that we're inundated with love. That's not quite what I want to say. But like even the music we listen to, like, I don't know. To be hand wavy, as you were saying, I think in a lot of ways, the media that we surround ourselves with features love and focuses on love, and we gravitate towards that. I mean, sometimes there are like films and I'm like, we did not need this love subplot. You just threw it in there. It doesn't feel necessary. But like when the focus is love, I'm all here for it.
Well, and there's also, I think this is maybe a question of what kinds of love are acceptable. And like talking about a love subplot reminded me specifically of the absolutely nonsensical like love subplot between Captain America and what's her name in Sharon, who I deeply adore. I really like that actress, but like that whole kiss sequence was to me clearly thrown in as a like no homo between Steve and Bucky. And that, I think, I don't know, just the kinds of love that are acceptable. And when there may be, I don't know where I'm going with that, but I don't know. What do you think? Here is this mess that I made.
Oh, thank you.
Would you like to clean it up?
For this. No, I'm going to muddy your mess a little bit more. Yeah, so this might just be scuttlebutt, and I should probably do some research to back this up, but something I remember hearing in my addled brain is that oftentimes romance subplots are thrown in to quote unquote attract a female audience.
No, it's annoying, but okay.
Yeah. So thinking about Captain America specifically, that might have been a thing that was thrown in to like attract women to the film.
They already had Chris Evans and Chris Evans' butt. What else did they need?
I was going to say, I don't need a stand-in to imagine myself making out with Captain America. I can do that well on my own. I love you, Andrew. But yeah, so like, I think it's interesting how and why romance might be shoehorned into stories and what the purpose is of putting it in there if it's not something that's just... And natural is the weird word to say because no story is natural, right? All of these things are created and written. But like, if it feels like it's not part of the progression of the narrative, it might have been put in for a very particular kind of reason or to attract a particular kind of audience. So yeah, that wasn't really... Maybe that's just what I was thinking about when you were talking. Because also, people still ship Bucky and... not Bucky and Cap all the time. Like putting Sharon in there is not going to stop that. I think more people were just weirded out by the fact that Sharon was Peggy's great niece. It's just like, oh no, implications of that are strange.
Yeah.
So
anyway, what are your favorite romance tropes, Ayani?
Oh, what a great transition, Corinne. So, okay, favorite romance tropes. Well, we have often shouted on the podcast about there is only one bed.
That is my top. It's like always so funny.
I also like when they subvert it on me when it's like, there's only one bed. I know what's going to happen. And they're like, haha, Yanni, no, you don't. And I'm like, oh, you tricked me. You tricked me with that one bed. So I do really like there's only one bed. That's one of my favorite ones. Especially, I mean, the characters for me have to at least be like somewhat getting along for it to be enjoyable.
Yeah.
It can't just be like, oh, these two hate each other. Stick them in a bed. Like, no, like, you know, I think there has to, even if they're kind of like sniping at each other, like, again, going back to Crash Landing, Seti and Ri Jung-hyuk, they were sniping at each other. But when there was only one bed, I was like, oh, only one bed. And they tricked me. But I appreciated it. And then they came back. They did their only one bed twice in that show. Because there was Captain Ree's house and then the hospital. So I got what I came for eventually, but like, you know, I think the characters need to be in a somewhat good place with a somewhat equitable power dynamic, or else I'll get a little freaked out. But I do love There's Only One Bed. Another one we have on the list that I like a lot is the fake out, make out.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, oh no, I have to kiss you so we don't get caught. And I'm like, ho, 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 spicy.
Yeah, another good example of that is, I think, Crash Landing on You. That's a delightful fake out, make out. So for that one, Seri is trying to get out of North Korea, and they're on a boat, and then they get caught by the people. I don't know. She's like, Captain Ri Young Hyuk is like smuggling her out on like the small fishing boat, and they're like hiding in the, I don't know, the hold of the boat. I don't know boat words.
Hull, maybe?
But then they get caught by the border patrol people, and then they gotta make out.
It's the only solution. The only solution is a make out. So like, but again,
yeah, they pretend that they're a engaged couple that wanted to go night fishing for some reason, and it works because people get so uncomfortable when they see people like making out that they just like, there's this like impulse to look away, I think, and be like, I don't want to watch that.
But yeah. And I think the last one, I actually have a pin that says this on it, but mutual pining, I think is very good when the two characters like really want each other, but for whatever reason, they're like still apart. I'm like, look at you. Look at how much you want each other. Like, I also like that one a lot. What about you? What are your favorite romance tropes?
Another one that I really like is fake dating and forced cohabitation, which often I think go hand in hand.
Okay. Speak on it. What you mean?
I think forced cohabitation because so like when characters have to live together for whatever reason, like because then they have to like see the mundane parts of each other's life, and then it's like if they then do fall in love, it's because they fall in love with the things that are ordinary about everyday life instead of like extraordinary circumstances. And I think that's what it really appeals to me about that one.
I'm nodding in sage agreement. Yes. So I had 3 romance tropes that I threw out there. But no, you picked a really good one. So on the flip side, are there any romance tropes that we cannot stand?
Yes.
You have feelings. Please proceed.
I think my least favorite romance trope is this sort of, I don't know, exaltification, that's not a word, but like of first love. And like if you the first person you love is the only person you love, and you will love them forever, and it's meant to be like because you loved them first. And I think that is very stupid. So I don't even know who the first person that I loved like that was. Like,
my parents say it was a big chef when I was 2. And that makes a lot of sense, knowing me. So, yeah, I forgot what they called him. They said his name was like Big something. And they were like, yeah, you love that man. And I was like, oh, yeah, makes sense.
But, like, I do also think this, like, enshrining of first love as a thing can result in people holding on to problematic relationships in real life. Because, like, oh, well, like, this is the person that I like, this has to be it, because so like I have to keep trying, and it's like, but you don't know anything different, so like you don't necessarily know what's wrong or that like you might deserve better. And also, I guess to bring it back to sex, that also like can tie it back to like I think the valuing of virginity, which is really, really complicated and can like lead to something like, well, like I can only ever like sleep with one person, so like I have to hold on to this person, and that just is really problematic to me.
Interesting. Yeah, I think for me, I liked your word enshrining, so I'm going to use it, but the enshrining of the first love, like sometimes, I guess this is my caveat, is that all of these kinds of tropes can be done well, right? Yeah. But for me, I kind of enjoy watching people meet each other, right? I think so much of our lives is meeting new people and coming in contact with new people, that there's something special to me about watching somebody's love grow, you know, even from people who knew each other already. Like But moving past the idea that I loved you when I was 7, so that means that we now have to be together forever. I think there's something nice about, like, you know, new loves that blossom. Like, this is part of the reason why I think I like stories about sometimes older people, like people who have lost spouses or people who have been divorced and are now trying to like find new love in the world, because I think there's something to be said for like the fact that all love doesn't work out. You know what I mean? And there's something that feels real and reassuring and hopeful about those kinds of circumstances to me. You know, yeah, there's one show that I'm watching right now that like I'm digging the love between the two characters, but then it was like flashback to when they were kids together, and I was like, oh man, couldn't they just met each other? Couldn't they like just be getting to know each other and fall in love? No, we can't do that. Okay, fine. So, you know, it's not that it can't be done well, but it's also like the reincarnated love, right? Like, I loved you in my past life. Like, it could work, you know, but also
I will say I think I have more of a soft spot for the reincarnated love storyline than either you or Andrew does. Andrew hates that.
Yeah, he does. I don't know why it really gets on his nerves. And it's not that it can work for me. Like, I really like the story of Mystic Pop-Up Bar. Like, I was texting you in tears about that story when I figured it out. Yet another K-drama. So it's not that it can't work. I just feel like sometimes people lean on it as a way to be like, see, these characters are destined to be together. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, like, I think I really liked it in Goblin, actually, which is another K-drama. But like
you've infected the entire podcast.
I apologize, and also I am not sorry.
I was gonna say, you're not sorry.
In that one, there's like a set of like reincarnated people who like were married in a past life, but like died tragically, and then they like get reincarnated and meet each other again, but like they end up remembering what happened. But I really like that because she ends up deciding that based on like what he did in their past life, that's too much, she can't deal with it, and even though like they keep finding each other, she's not doing it again.
Oh, that's an interesting take on the trope. It's not just like we found each other again and now we're gonna get married again. Not that that can't work, but like the fact that she was like, you know what, I think I want to try something else. That's interesting. That's interesting.
Then they are reincarnated again in the last episode, but like they have no knowledge of their previous lives that time.
Well, that's fine. If they got a chance to do it differently, and they made a decision to maybe not, so that's fine. Yeah. As a last one on romance tropes we don't like, I'm not wild about couples that don't treat each other well. It's not that you can't have arguments or you can't have disagreements. Oh, actually, you know what? I might want to switch gears here for a second. Because saying that, one of the things I like in romance is showing how people deal with these kinds of issues, right? When everything's not rosy and perfect, but like you have to work through things as a couple. I don't know. I like those kind of stories because I don't know if we've talked about this on the podcast. Maybe we have. It's been a year. But the fact that a lot of stories end at the quote unquote, and then they lived happily ever after, right? I like watching the stories that come afterwards. Like, okay, so what is it actually like to be in love with this person? Conversations about love taking effort and taking work. And as you said, taking action. You know what I mean? I find those stories to be engaging and interesting. So sometimes when there's like, yeah, that's something I like, not something I don't like. But what I was going to say is that I don't like couples who don't treat each other well. Like when someone's just taking all of the hits and all of the lumps for the other partner, but like they soldier on through it and that's the story. And it's like, no, don't let people treat you badly because of love. No.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful, I think, about like, because I do think there can be interesting stories told about abusive relationships as long as the story knows that relationship is abusive.
Right. I don't think that'd be a romance though, right?
No, it wouldn't. Well, yeah, probably not. I don't know. But it's complicated when what should be considered abusive or unequal relationships are romanticized as the romantic ideal. That's I think the problem.
And I think it's important to emphasize here that we're talking specifically about like romance stories, because once you get into like erotic stories, that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah.
A can of worms that I study, but not a can of worms that we're talking about right now. So yeah, this actually feels like a good point to me to open up our conversation because we spent a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time talking about romance. And I think one of the things that we try to do, I don't know if we're always 100% successful, but one of the things we try to do is think about how love is broader than just romantic relationships, right? There are
Mm-hmm.
so many relationships that are important in your life beyond just the romantic ones.
Mm-hmm.
So, since we keep coming back to K dramas, coming back to Crash Landing, one of the things we really liked about that story was getting the chance to see I mean, would you call them found family units? But like
Oh
these
yeah, I would
different, like,
definitely call it found family, but also like different kinds of community as well, because there was like
mm-hmm.
Seti and the ducklings, so Captain Ri Jung Hook's like
Yeah.
squad of
Mm-hmm.
soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
There were the North Korean market ladies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There were
Yeah.
even the people at Yoon Seti's company who were like
That's
really
true.
worried
Mm-hmm.
about her. So like these different spaces where love exists and love matters. Like it wasn't just Seti and Ri Jung Hyuk's relationship that mattered. It was
Right. Yeah.
also these other constellations of relationships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I know for you, found family is one of your favorite,
Hmm.
I guess, love tropes. Is that a fair thing to say?
I think we can just call it a trope. We don't gotta say love trope.
Love tropes. But yeah, you really enjoy found families, and I do too. I think there's something to be said for like your friends becoming your family. Like there are many people in my life who, we're not blood related, but like I consider them family. So
Hmm.
is there beyond Crash Landing, was there an episode that like thinking about found family really struck a chord for you?
I think we also really liked the found family aspect of It's Okay to Not Be Okay,
Mhm.
because we
Mhm.
had, I mean, like, Kom Eun Young and Moon Gang Tae, but we also had Song Tae.
Right.
So it was like that group of three were like
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
found family, and it wasn't. And then even just and even then extending outward, we could also include like the book editor and his assistant and
Mhm.
Juri and
Mhm.
Juri's mom. So
Yeah, no, I think that was a really good one. I was just scrolling through our list to see if there are other found families that we had talked about. Ooh, excuse me. But yeah, I think It's Okay was definitely one of the good ones. But kind of connecting to that, I think just friendships, I
mhm.
know and thinking about the love between friends is a really important kind of conversation that I like to have. And I know that maybe is related to found family, but I do think looking at even in romance stories, right? Like how the
Mhm.
friends treat each other is something that's very important to me in reading these
Well,
stories.
and like so in I think it was our first Love Seed episode on True Beauty, we were
Ah,
so
mhm.
upset by like the betrayal of female friendship that like
Yeah.
it
Mhm.
ruined a lot of the drama for us,
Yeah.
because for us that like female friendship was so important.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, 100%. And actually it got me thinking about Happiest Season too. I remember one of the things that we were yelling about is like beyond not being a good girlfriend, Harper wasn't a good friend.
Mhm.
And just kind of thinking about the ways how sometimes our friend relationships are even more important than the romances in our lives.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. We have gotten really pissed off about the way people being bad friends. We're like, treat your friends with love and respect, people. That's our word of advice for the day. Be good to your friends. I know another one of my weaknesses, not to like zoom through these, but another one of my weaknesses is definitely stories about parents and their children.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm really weak to like for a variety of reasons that we will not unpack here. But yeah, I remember, well, I mean, just talking about Fruits Basket, there's a lot of parent children relationships there that I'm like, oh no, I'm crying now. I think I keep coming back to Crash Landing, but thinking about Seri's relationship with her mother in that show, I don't know if we
Mhm.
got to talk about it very long, but the moms, both her mom and Captain Lee's mom, like,
And Dan's mom.
oh yeah, so those kind of mother child relationships were so poignant. I know talking to
Mhm.
Andrew, he said that the moment where the two mothers met, when Dan's mom and Captain Lee's mom met, was for him one of the most emotionally impactful moments in the series. So stories that kind of think about
parental love, I think.
Yeah, parental love can really strike a chord with me. Funny story in that regard.
Oh yeah, you started this episode crying about your cat son.
My cat son, right? But there was a commercial, I think clearly not for this Olympics, but like the last Olympics, that was about this woman who's a boxer, and she was talking about how hard it is to be a female boxer in a male dominated sport, and da-da-da-da-da. But she said, but there's always someone who's been in my corner. And then she brought out her little old dad on the commercial. Aww. And I was just like, fucking lost it. And I was so upset because it was a damn Coke commercial. So like, they knew what they were doing. They were trying to impact me. I did not buy more Coke. Like, they didn't get what they wanted. But like, when her daddy came out and gave her a hug, and she was like, thank you so much for supporting me, and he was like, oh, I love you, I was just like, ah. So even in like bite-sized narratives, there's something about parental love that I think can be so moving for me. Yeah. I'm especially weak to daddy-daughter relationships with us because I am a daddy's girl. So, you know.
And then I guess in a sort of parallel kind of relationship to that I really enjoy in a lot of media is like sibling relationships. So like one of the reasons I really liked Doom at Your Service is the relationship between the female lead and her younger brother was really good, and it was just such a delight to watch because he was just like such a cute little puppy dog, but also he was so dumb sometimes, but also like he loved his sister so much. And like when he found out she had brain cancer, like he was so upset.
I mean, I would hope so. He was like, oh, that's fine. I'm like, wow, okay. But I mean, thinking about younger brothers in media, because that's also one of my weaknesses. In another K-drama, Be Melodramatic, there's a brother-sister pair in that. And some of their moments together, like, those like broke me. So I do think, kind of thinking about, it's funny, we moved from like found family to, what is it? Not genetic family.
Biological.
Thank you. Biological family. But all of these different kinds of relational ties, I think, are super, super important to think about in conversations of love. There was
and they're also, I think they're important to think about even in romance stories, because when you don't have other relationships to complement the like main romance pairing, the story can be very thin.
Yeah. And I mean, to preach just for a little bit, but life can also be very thin when you don't have a variety of, like, I remember there was an article that I was looking at a little while ago that was talking about how we can expect our partners to be everything for us. And that's not fair because no one person can be everything. And then there was another article that I only saw the headline of, but I agreed with the headline that was like, friendships can be just as important as romantic relationships, right? So in romance stories, when we're thinking about who people have around them, like friends, family, people that care about them, people that love them, I think it makes for a broader, more fulfilling picture, even if what we really want is for the two leads to only have one bed. I also want there to be someone that they can call about it and be like, ooh, girl, there was only one bed, but I slept on the floor. And then it'd be like, no, no, they tricked me again.
Way to bring it back.
I told you. I love that trope. Oh, there's also Red, White, and Royal Blue did this, but oh no, we're stuck in a closet, which is kind of like, there's only one bed. Because what it is it's the sudden proximity of two people that have to deal with the fact that their bodies are close to each other. And it's like, oh no, your thigh is touching my thigh. And I'm like, oh, our thighs touching? Is that what's happening?
Oh my God. Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm a mess.
It's that hurricane energy.
It's the hurricane energy. But one last thing, and then I'll point to you to see if you have any closing comments. But I read the webtoon Let's Play, which I know isn't everybody's cup of tea, but it's one of those that like I started reading and now I need to know how it ends. Like I'm in it. And it just came back today. So we're recording on, I know you're not supposed to say this, but we're recording on July 6th, right? So it just came back today. And to say this in the most non-spoiler way, the main character, she fell asleep. And when she woke up, she realized that she was in bed with one of the attractive male characters.
Oh my.
Yes, it was. We saw what happened beforehand. He was perfectly gentlemanly. Nothing bad happened. But it was still very funny when she woke up. She, like, looked over and he was just there half naked. And it's that same kind of like, oh no, I have now proximity to your attractive body and I don't know what I'm going to do. Granted, there were 2 beds, but she walked into his bedroom. So I'll leave that alone because then there only ended up being 1 bed at that point. So whatever. But yeah, so that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm done ranting about this trope. Corinne, any last thoughts for us on love / romance? Because I guess we kind of were there for a while.
I think I might tie it back to the way we closed out our Crash Landing on You episode, I think, where instead of thinking about love as the answer, thinking about love as the motivation is more helpful to me. And it's both looking at the way love motivates characters to act different ways in stories, but also the way that love motivates us to care about those stories. I think it's just interesting to think about and be aware of in all of our conversations.
That's great. A really even-keeled place to kind of wrap up the episode. I appreciate you. Rein in that hurricane energy. So yeah, this has been our conversation about why love. I think it was fun, if not a little frantic. Our next La Petite in this series is going to be why literature, though perhaps more accurately, what literature, because if you haven't noticed, we don't talk about a lot of books, but the question is perhaps what is literature even? So we'll tackle that a little bit. That one might be a little bit more academic than this conversation was.
Yeah, this was pretty all over the place.
And I do think we both have some pretty strong feelings about what literature means that might come through in that conversation, especially because of the things that we study. So keep your eyes open for that. But as far as deep dives are concerned, depending on how quickly I edit this episode or when we put it out, you'll either have Your Name coming up, our conversation about Your Name, aka Kimi no Nawa, which we apparently are going to have a special guest who you'll see more information about. He's very excited about this. He keeps asking when we're going to watch the movie. If you haven't guessed, it's spouse. He's in the house. He asks these questions frequently.
Are you writing a poem?
What, to Andrew?
He's a spouse in the house.
Oh, he's a spouse in the house. No, I'll leave the poetry to the MFAs and to like me in high school. But if that's already come out and you've already listened to that, we are very excited to have a special guest that's coming on to do an interview with us. Corinne, would you like to introduce the special guest?
Yeah, we will be interviewing one of my very good friends, Coyote Shook, on their graphic memoir, Coyote the Beautiful. They won the prize from, I think, the Florida Review for it. And I am extremely excited to talk to them about it. Coyote and I lived in the same city in Poland the year I was there. So I have been very excited to see how their career has progressed since then.
Yeah, we'll have to think of some good questions to ask them so we're not just like, hurricanes, huh? And bumble along through that. Don't roll your eyes.
I mean, no, they their primary research is on like Florida ecology and disability. So like they're real into the whole like gator swamp situation. So hurricanes might work.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's what that conversation will just be about. Gators and hurricanes and, I don't know, flowers that grow in Florida.
Living in the swamp.
Living in the swamp. But on that note, this has been another La Petite SLL. As always, if you are interested in hearing more from us in a non-podcast format, you can find Sex Love Lit on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Sex Love Lit. All one word will come up in all of those places. And I think by the time this episode comes out, we may have already printed our stickers, which is very exciting. I could be wrong. So if this goes live before July 15th, you can still request to have stickers of your own by going to our link tree, which you can get to through our Instagram. But if not, we're going to have stickers available. And if you'd like one, you can let us know and we'll be happy to send one along your way. But yeah, so this has been another La Petite SLL. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Bye.